serve the public trust, protect the innocent, uphold the law. Greetings, my name is Zoe, that's spelled Z-O or Z to the O for those of you outside of the U.S. Welcome back, friends. This is the 149th episode of Backlook Cinema, the podcast, where we take a look back at the movies of yesteryear, especially the movies of the latter half of the last millennium. And what you heard at the top of the show were the three prime directives of the main character of, the theme of the show that we're going to do today. And the reason I did that, usually I try to do a haiku or poem or something like that, but this was just perfect. These lines were ingrained in my memory for over 40 years, a long time. I don't even know how long I've said these things to myself. So I just wanted to, and I could have easily made it into a haiku, but I chose not to. These lines are pure. These lines need to be said as they were written. And to help me express the love and affection I have for this movie that we're about to talk about, I have a special guest. But before I get into that, I want to ask you that if you like what you're about to hear, then please tell your family, tell your friends, and tell that cyborg cop about our humble little show. So, as promised on the last show, we have an incredible guest. My next guest is a multi-talented actor, writer, and producer who's taking on TikTok and YouTube and podcasting with her shows Movie Runtime and What If I Don't Like It with KT Baldassaro. Please welcome KT Baldassaro.
Excited to be on for this particular episode because I love RoboCop. It's one of my favorite films, and it's ironically the first film that I spoke about that I got a response back from another high-level director. I was talking about the RoboCop documentary, and I wound up talking to Eastwood Allen, who's on Instagram, who did the whole directed and did that particular one, which is 4 hours of more RoboCop stuff. So I promised to reel it in and not talk for 5 hours about RoboCop, but I could talk for 5 hours about RoboCop.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, KT, for joining us. I really appreciate you being here. I discovered you on TikTok, and I love the content that you produce. And then I discovered, you mentioned that you had a podcast. I was like, well, let me go check that out. I think the first one I listened to was The Wizard of Oz, and it was right around the time that I was producing my own Wizard of Oz episode. So I was like, oh man, I gotta check this out.
Yes,
I gotta see more insight.
Yeah, that one's interesting. It's my first crossover episode because I do a lot of work with Movie Night Extravaganza, which is a 3-hour hangout where they do deep dives into movies. And they found out I had never seen The Wizard of Oz. So my whole show, What If I Don't Like It, is about finding people who haven't seen movies, maybe for particular reasons, even though people tell them they should probably check out that movie. We unpack why. Then we let them watch the movie, and then we talk to them about whether or not it actually held up. Sometimes I myself am the person who hasn't seen the movie, like with The Wizard of Oz, and our guest will come on and walk me through why I should.
Yeah, and for that particular episode, The Wizard of Oz, it was a hard walk for you.
Oh, God, yeah. It's gotten a lot of illumination into different things in my life. I'm glad that I saw it because now I know when people are talking about it in things. And it also speaks to a type of filmmaking and fandom that I don't care for, but I also engage in, which is fucking hilarious.
Right.
Which is when people tell you need to see a movie, and then you also need to see 17 ancillary things surrounding that movie to fully appreciate the movie. And you're like, I don't want to do that. But anime fans always make you do that. And I am an anime fan. So okay, I get it.
So
but it is oof.
I was just going to say, so you fall into your own trap.
Of course, constantly. I mean, is there a film critic amongst us who isn't, a hypocrite? They're a critic and a hypocritic.
Right. Yeah, we've got to sometimes it's not enough to watch one Marvel film. Sometimes you got to watch like a 6 or 7 Marvel films.
you you can't know what's good unless you know what is bad. So
Right.
you have to explore those areas. And sometimes you'll find like, hey, everything about this sucked except for this one kernel. And I'm kind of interested in why that didn't suck. And
Right,
that in and of
right,
itself is a whole thing. Yeah.
right. That's awesome. So I wanted to ask you, your name is spelled on all your socials. It's spelled the capital K, small letter T, pronounced Katie. So that's awesome. And so so why is it capital K and small letter T? Why isn't it capital K, capital T?
Because it doesn't stand for anything.
Oh,
Usually
okay.
when somebody does 2 letters like that, it's like Caitlin Thomas or Christian Tiffany. Like it's not a short for anything. Like that's just the name. You just don't have vowels.
Right, right, right. Oh, you know what that reminds me of? It kind of reminds me the way we used to write state names. So state names is like Maryland, where I live at, is MD, but we used to write capital M, small d, or Texas, capital T, small x. But now it's I guess like the habits have changed. So now we just write capital letters for all of that. So that's it. That's where how your name is. It's like a state name. It's capital T, small
Yeah.
letter T. I mean capital K, small letter T. So that answers that question. I get it now.
Yeah. It's funny. There's a stand-up comedian whose name eludes me right now who does a whole bit where he's jokingly reviewing a documentary that does not exist, that is about the group of people who decided when and why and how to make all of the shortened state names to just 2 letters.
Right.
And it is such a funny bit, but I am such a documentary nerd that I was like, oh man, I wish that was real because I would watch that documentary.
Yeah, you do go through a lot of documentaries on your TikTok. But the other thing I want to ask you about, not necessarily related to documentaries, but you kind of let slip. Because what I really like about watching you is that you reveal a lot of yourself in your videos. So one of the things you revealed is that you're deeply into fencing. Oh, this is actually related to a documentary because you were talking about a fencing documentary, weren't you?
Ripped from the headlines. Currently a scandal in the Olympics. I was because I am a competitive sport fencer. My husband is was the president until last year of the Collegiate Club Fencing League. And like we are deep in it. I know the people in this documentary. I know who they are talking about. He's a saber fencer. For the people listening who are not familiar, there is a big scandal in the upcoming Paris Olympics where there are 2 American fencers who have qualified to the Olympics but have cheated to get that qualification. There is an oligarch paying, either threatening or bribing certain refs to throw the match in their favor. And because of the way that saber is refereed, it is not technically illegal what they're doing, and it is incredibly difficult to even prove it.
Wow.
And the
Of
only
all the
reason they
sports.
found out is because, yeah, there's data. Like the data started to look weird. They're like, how come when these people fence with these referees, they're 25% better than when they don't? And so like data nerds uncovered this.
Right, right. Who would have thunk it? I never would have suspected that there was a scandal in fencing.
Oh, so much scandal. And if you're interested in finding out more, you can go watch the Pablo Torres Pablo Finds Out episode about this and figure out how it all gets connected together. And oh God, I hope they do something about it. They tried to, but they're going to go to the Olympics. They're going to get to fence.
Right, right. So is this where you fenced and was it like, did it start in high school and in college or did you start fencing in college?
I started fencing in high school. Yeah, actually, there's a really ridiculous reason. When I was much younger, I got into a scrap with my brother and I accidentally got blinded in my left eye. And I lost most vision, but just colors and shapes. And so I had very bad depth perception and couldn't play any sports with a ball. But in New York City, you still need to take a gym class. So the only gym classes that were available for me at my high school were breakdancing and fencing, and breakdancing was full. So I had to take fencing.
I was going to say, what? You didn't take a chance to take breakdancing, but you could get in. That's
Oh,
amazing.
dude, I had just seen the film Breakin'.
Yes!
I would have 100% been breakdancing. Give me a broom, give me some fun. Why not? But I wound up falling in love with fencing. And I did love The Princess Bride as a kid, so it kind of tied right on in. And then I started fencing competitively in the sport leagues, PSAL leagues, and then again in the USFA leagues. And then I fenced for Smith College at a collegiate level as well. And I almost qualified for the Junior Olympics. I missed by one touch.
Oh, man. I imagine that you must be pretty wicked with the lightsaber.
Oh, God, yeah. Actually, my husband has someone who he trained who works out in Los Angeles, and that is what they do. They do choreographed lightsabering stuff. Like, they've made a whole thing out of it. So it's very, very based on fencing. It's good stuff.
Right. I have a few lightsabers myself. And what I found is that the official lightsabers the handles are too thick, and I have dainty lady hands. I've been blessed with dainty lady hands, so I can't really wield these lightsabers the way that I like. So I went to like one of those companies that sell like off-brand lightsabers, and they fit my hand perfectly. And I love working with those. Well, I used to. I don't work with them as much anymore, but there was like a short period of time where I was actually making videos of myself twirling the lightsabers. I never shared them. I only did it to self-evaluate, and I looked foolish. But
yeah. Well, I'm not going to throw any shade because I have such small hands that I have to get my adult weapons fit with children's grips.
Wow.
So I feel you. I feel you on that.
So, what do you use different types of sabers when you fence, or is it just I'm
a foilist, but there is a standard that each weapon has to adhere to, like a minimum standard. It needs to be this long. It needs to, have this length of a blend on a bend on the blade or no more. Because I fence with a point weapon, the point has a trigger and a little tiny like clicking aspect of it that connects to a wire that is like connecting to my body, so we can see whether or not I've hit on target or not, and when the timing happens. My husband uses a saber, which is a much bigger one, and it's the whole side of the blade, so it doesn't have the clicky thing at the top. But the handle part can change vastly. And the way that the wires connect, you can have like a preferred way of doing it. There's an Italian way, there's a Polish way, there's a Russian way. And people get very persnickety about which one you use. And of course, there's only one right way and all the other ones are stupid.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess people can get pretty pedantic about just about anything.
Oh, yeah. If you're listening and you care, I use a Visconti. That's about as much as anyone needs to know for this podcast.
What's interesting is that there's another podcast that I listen to called The Black Guy Who Tips. And in this podcast, he has a section called, what's it called? It's called Sword Ratchetness. And he calls it that because in the news, there's always somebody in the news where somebody is attacking somebody else with a sword. Like it could be a samurai sword or like a cutlass or like a long sword. Like somebody's always, and it's usually a samurai sword. Somebody's always attacking somebody else with a sword. He's finding these stories on the internet, and it's just amazing.
That's great. I'm here for that. For sure.
Right. So let me switch over to what we're here for. We're here for writing and acting. So what came first? Was it the writing that came first for you, or was it the acting?
It was the acting that came first. I think it's a little bit easier. I was doing it very, very young, so it's a little bit easier to get into things when you're that young, But the producing also started very young because I'm a pain in the ass. So I was doing a lot of acting in high school, which when you're in New York City, because of the size of everything, winds up being a musical because you need to get so many kids on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
But because you're also in New York City, nobody has any goddamn money, so we can't really afford the full music to accompany this. And also there's a rule where you can't perform a Broadway play within 50 miles of another play production of it. So that means we can only do stuff that is not currently on Broadway, and we also can't afford the music to accompany it. So I've done Fiddler on the Roof a cappella. Like, it's funny. A hellscape. It's a hellscape because everybody sings slightly off.
Right.
So it becomes like 5 hours long. So very young age, I knew that I needed to produce myself. And so I started doing like, okay, well, I'll run a small drama adjacent to our musical that we'll do, and we'll run it all together, and we'll put that on, and it'll be super sad instead of super funny. And so I once did a production of Wit in high school, which is a very, very sad play about cancer, to raise money for the Gilda Radner Foundation. And that's probably when I realized that, like, if I wanted to do something substantive, I needed to either be driving it myself as the producer or writing it myself as the writer, because women are just not taken seriously and we're not given decent roles. And again, like, I'm still a background actor. I'm still trying to act in things. So if you look at my stuff on IMDb, I have been in some questionable fucking horror movies where, like, women were not treated well, but, you know, I got a day's pay and it's a movie on my credits. So, like, you have to temper the things that you love when you're making art like this with the things that are going to get out there. And, you know, it's not all good.
Right. You have to balance what you're passionate about with what's going to pay the bills.
And working those projects, you'll meet other passionate people. Like, all the people that I used to make Girl in the Basement, which is my first thing that I wrote. It's a short horror film that is a body horror based on what it's like to have anorexia, the kind of personality that would actively pursue something that is obviously horrible for you, but why do people still do it? And I used all people from horror movies in Western Mass that were categorically terrible, but we worked our butts off on those. And if we had been given something decent, what would we make? And the answer is Girl in the Basement, amongst many other things. If you look at Jared Skolnick, he is a wonderful filmmaker who's now out in Los Angeles, who made really substantive things out here in Western Mass. And I adore working with him.
Right. That's interesting that you bring. I was going to ask about Girl in the Basement because I did not, for instance, realize that it was about anorexia. That it was a story about anorexia. But I am a particularly dense person, so a lot of stuff is going to go over my head. The other thing is that it looked rather uncomfortable. Was there a particularly challenging portion of that where, like, in your acting that you had difficulty with?
Yeah. I mean, the good thing about Girl in the Basement, it is what we call a bottle episode in the industry, meaning it's really just the one location with very limited actors. We did offshoots for flashbacks that, again, contained one additional actor and one additional location, because this is done on a $5,000 Kickstarter budget. So we're trying to keep it really short. We still have SAG standards because it's still SAG ultra low budget. So that, you know, our actors are still getting paid for their day rate. But this is so much body horror that you have to act pain. And I think as an actor, when you're doing something that doesn't have lines, how do you let the audience know what you're experiencing without overacting, without just yelling or screaming? Because the main character is in pain a lot of this 30-minute film. And it's, as someone who is recovering from a chronic illness myself, which is why I started on TikTok. I'm a circus performer and I can't perform right now because I'm having some health issues. So talking about film is me trying to still, like, exist somewhere. So I know that pain is mostly in your breath. And that's why in Girl in the Basement, you hear a lot of, like, the quality of breathing that is necessary to get through movements and things like that. But the most uncomfortable aspect of Girl in the Basement, and I did this to myself like an idiot, is that it is shot in a basement on a cold cement floor. And I decided to start losing articles of clothing as, like, things to use and tools. But what did I do? I made my poor protagonist in a horror movie with a female lead go down to just her bra. Like, fuck. It was so cold. Everything was so cold.
Yeah. I see. And I had no I had no. I didn't even consider that it would be cold in the basement. So you're actually freezing, and you didn't shiver, so that's a good thing. And you hear a lot about how actors are they might be doing something in Canada in like maybe February or somewhere around October. They're shooting something in October, but it's supposed to be the summertime. So it's like maybe 70 to maybe not even 70 degrees. Maybe it's 60 degrees, but you have to walk around in a wife beater and act as though it's a hot summer day. So you're basically
Yes.
kind of doing that same thing. So I had not even considered that. That must have. Actors are always doing something really uncomfortable, it seems.
That's funny that you would say that. It's so true because of the way that things are released. Summer movies are usually released in the summer, but that means that they were probably shot in the winter or the fall.
Right.
I actually was one of the minor characters in Purge Election Year. I'm one of the Russian murder tourists. You see me on a couple of posters. I have the like I have the flag face where it's all melting and the little tiny top hat. That was shot because we also had to do pickups. It was shot in September and then shot again in November at 2:00 in the morning in Rhode Island. And your girl has short shorts and a bustier, and I keep getting sprayed down with fake blood. So I'm actively wet. It is 2:00 in the morning, and it is New England, end of November.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Oh, I see. I hate being cold.
I threw up. I didn't know you could be so cold that you could throw up, but I did.
Oh my goodness. Oh my. That is
Yeah.
that's a difficult situation to be in. Ladies and gentlemen, not everybody can act.
No, it's you. See, you think of it, it's just remembering the lines and being in the right place and networking. No, it is physical endurance and then also still doing your line.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Especially
Because
if you're doing a horror movie.
I have the much the same issue with just trying to do stuff for TikTok or YouTube. There are certain things, or even like this podcast. That's why I have everything written down because I can't remember anything. So when I'm trying to do certain videos, there are certain things I want to remember. I gotta have some kind of note off cameras that I can refer to because it's just amazing how somebody could just do a monologue and not mess it up. So it's just fascinating. I enjoy that. It's a feat of magic that people can do that. So you also have We Have Ghosts at Home. That was something that you recently released, and I imagine that was somewhat easier than some of your previous efforts. So do you see yourself making more content for YouTube and TikTok, or are you trying to parlay more into television and film?
I want to say it's a beautiful medium of the both because what I can do with TikTok is test run stuff, beta stuff. I mean, it's a beautiful turducken situation where I'm talking about film, but in the essence, I'm talking about film on TikTok. I have made a tiny film. So I
Right.
can work on my script, my delivery, my editing, and certain things that I do. So sometimes I'll do a review where I want the style of the review to reflect the style of the film itself. So I can practice special effects. I can practice lighting. I can practice different types of editing and music. And then I can use that at a larger size for maybe a 5-minute film. Okay, then maybe a 30-minute and then feature, because the amount of funding that goes into making larger films, you need other people to be on board with you. So you kind of need to have a proof in the pudding. So if you can say, here's my 5-minute teaser of what we could do with no money, you'll wind up being able to fund something in the long run. Plus, it gives you a chance to make mistakes in a tiny way. Like, nobody's going to judge me if my 5-minute film on YouTube isn't perfect. It shouldn't be, honestly.
Right. What's interesting is that, yeah, what you say is true. There's like you can test something out, and then sometimes like I'll spend like, several hours trying to put like a video together, and then release it to social media, and it's like, oh, nobody saw this. Well, that was I don't really consider it a wasted effort, but it's like, well, I see how it did. You know what I mean?
And there's something to be said in the effort itself. I think if you focus too much on the reception of your art in any field of art, you will wind up hurting your soul. You will wind up hurting the reason that gets you up and making art, and you will wind up making it a day job. It will become difficult to do the thing you wanted to do in the long run.
Right. And the other thing is that what you call it? I actually had a point to make, and now I can't remember it.
I'm so sorry.
It's not your fault. It was just something on the back of my head. It's something about how the algorithm is not in our control. So it's not actually a reflection on how good the work is. It's just a reflection on what the algorithm was doing. So there's that. There's that to consider as well. But once again, thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Why don't you tell the audience about how they can find you? What are your what do you call it? Your social media handles, your websites, where can they find you on a YouTube or TikTok?
All that good, delicious, juicy stuff. If you want to find me on TikTok, which is predominantly where I am the most active right now, the handle is movie runtime. And that'll get you right there. If you want to find me on YouTube, it's still movie runtime. Super easy. And guess what? If you want to find me on Letterboxd, it's movie runtime. But if you want to find me on Instagram, it's Little Deadly Creature. And I know that I should probably make it movie runtime, but I've had that handle for so long and I absolutely adore it because one of my nom de plume other names that I use is just the letter L and just the letter C because it can be pronounced like the name Elsie. So just like KT, there's Elsie and it stands for Little Creature. That one is 2 capital letters. So those are where you can find me on the socials. You can also find me on X. It's not Twitter, it's X. Under PT Baldassaro. So, all that good stuff.
So,
when does this episode go live?
I think I wrote it on the bottom. I think it's July 22nd. Let me double check. Yeah, the 22nd.
Okay, perfect.
2 weeks from now.
So you'll find me on Movie Runtime a lot, which is another show on YouTube that I am a live guest and sometimes a co-host for. I love the people over there. It's a really fun hangout, and you can kind of join us live on the day that it airs and chat with us. I will be on a very special episode of that is on a Friday, which is August 2nd, with Renee Roon of The Night Shift. She's down in Australia, and we're going to talk about all 3 of the Lord of the Rings, which is like, oh my God, I get to sit here and talk about RoboCop, and then in a couple of weeks, I'm going to get to sit and talk about all 3 of the Lord of the Rings. Like, Jesus Christ, they're going to have to mute my mic because I'm going to be that person in the background with all the, did you know in this scene when he kicks the helmet? Like, God, cut her fucking mic.
Right.
Yeah, 8 p.m.
Oh, that's at 8 p.m.?
8 p.m. on the 2nd.
Oh, okay, awesome. That's August 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. We should check that out. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get you talking about the movie that we are here to talk about.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the next segment is the opening credits. You know that was actually the wrong button, but we're going to roll with it.
I was like, what button is? Are we popping crinkly paper? What's that?
that was supposed to be. On your end, it probably sounds like crinkly things, but what it's supposed to sound like is an audience clapping. But because the internet, the sound gets distorted. But go ahead and let the audience know. Let my listeners know. Let the people who love movies know what movie we watched and what the deal with this particular movie.
Absolutely. We watched the glorious film RoboCop. Crime is running rampant in the city of Detroit. The city's resources are stretched to the limit, which leaves the police ill-equipped to deal with the relentless onslaught of criminality. In comes Omni Consumer Products with their far-fetched crime-fighting initiative, an officer that's part man, part machine. A robotic cop that is preloaded with 3 preliminary directives and nearly impervious to damage. a machine with a singular purpose of bringing peace to the streets of this dirty metropolis. The corporate overlords of Motor City have delivered unto its citizens a chrome-colored savior. Well, I'll buy that for $1.
Absolutely. So RoboCop was released July 17th, 1987, produced by Orion Pictures. It grossed over $53 million in the US and Canada on a reported budget of $13 million. So if we adjust that for inflation, it's today it would be like $146 million the gross, and the budget would have been $35 million, which is pretty good, pretty good. It would explain why there have been a multitude of attempts to continue the story of RoboCops. Most of them not particularly successful. So before we get into who's starring in the movie, what does RoboCop mean to you? Like, how did you come across this movie?
Wow. You know, I don't think I saw it even close to when it came out. I probably the very first time I saw it was when my husband showed it to me. So we had a tendency of showing films back and forth where you're like, I can't believe you haven't seen Repo Man, and I can't believe you haven't seen Buckaroo Banzai. So this is something for him that was definitely a childhood favorite, which is funny when you think about like childhood.
Right.
Like maybe the rating system wasn't fully solid at the time, and maybe he shouldn't have seen it when he was a teenager, but he loved it, and I saw it as like maybe in my mid-20s. So I got to watch it fully knowing that it failed on its first viewing because people didn't know it was a satire. I got to know it was a satire before I hit play.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, how the fuck do you not know this is a satire?
Right. I had no idea that it failed, that people didn't get it was a satire, because when I watched it, I knew that it was a satire right away. It's like it hits you in the face, like with the fact that it's a satire. And I remember when I first watched it, we had a theater near where I grew up that's not there anymore, but it was called the Jerry Lewis Cinemas, and I had been working. I saved up my money, got one of my best friends who went to the movie theater, like, let's go check this out. It was it was a simpler time because I was younger, right? Mm-hmm. Walking to the movie theater, and it basically just we got our collective minds blown away watching this movie. So it was fascinating. It was like everything we wanted and didn't know that we wanted it, right? It was that type of feeling. And
oh my God. Yeah.
It's part action movie, part horror movie. Well, it's a tiny sliver of horror, and it's a sci-fi epic.
You can call it horror.
Yeah. And then it's just an amazing sci-fi epic that really talks about what it means to be human. So yeah,
I would say it's body horror. There's an extreme loss of autonomy for our main character. So yeah, I would definitely label this horror.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to get into talk about who was in this movie. So first we have Peter Weller. He played Alex Murphy and RoboCop. He's also been in Naked Lunch, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, and Star Trek Into Darkness, among many other films.
Fantastic. I love him in Buckaroo Banzai. That is truly a favorite film of mine that my husband and I quote all the time. I can't believe sometimes I'll walk in a room and be like, is somebody in here not having a good time?
Right. I need to go watch it again, but I'm afraid to, because it's like when I watched it before, it's like I enjoyed it, but I had no idea what I watched. So I'm afraid that I'm going to experience that again, but I desperately need to go and watch that again. And then he's been in a bunch of TV shows too.
Yeah, it's got it in spades. It's got a lot of weirdness in spades. If you like that kind of everything everywhere all at once, Repo Man, like Swiss Army Man, Brazil, like you're gonna enjoy this. I don't want to leave over Peter Weller, who is like a huge part of this movie and why this movie succeeds. I mean, his whole approach to the cop, I think, is why he gives it such gravitas, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely worked in the part. There was a part that I read in the trivia that kind of helped the RoboCop character, so that I had not known about. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
he was really into this character.
He's also an accomplished musician and I, I want to say Roman history professor. He teaches in upstate New York, and he also still is in like a jazz jam band with Jeff Goldblum. Like he is a really wacky person.
Yeah, he had a show for a little while where he talked about I think it was Roman history or Italian
Roman
history.
history, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. And then also we have Nancy Allen, who plays Annie Lewis, and you might know her from Dress to Kill, The Philadelphia Experiment, or even Carrie.
Right. It's funny because let me see. I don't think I've seen any of these movies. I know about them, but
Oh,
I hadn't seen them.
yeah.
So the only time I ever remember seeing Nancy Allen is in RoboCop. I know, or any of the like sequels, and I know that she's been in a couple other things, but I only recognize her when I see her in this movie.
And she's got such a different look in this film. I mean, they've cut her hair very short, and she's playing a more gender neutral or more masculine character, which I really like. Like, they could have crammed in this kind of love story between the two of them and tried to make that happen. But, like, it doesn't exist there. She gets to be a whole character. It passes aspects of the Bechdel test. I like it.
The other thing about it is that she is the way she is because especially in the 80s it's like women were just getting into male dominated fields like construction, police officer, firefighters. And they're basically pressured to be more masculine in order to fit in with that crowd. So I think that in this movie it's kind of a reflection of her and that character.
Oh, yeah. And I think it's interesting as opposed to, say, Faye Dunaway in Network, who's a masculine character that's deeply sexualized and still physically feminine. You get a physically neutral character here who is also masculine and dominating, but still clearly female. It's well written.
Right, right. Also, we have Dan O'Harth. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
O'Herlihy.
Yeah, thank
It's
you.
O'Herlihy.
I should have practiced this name. Thanks
That's
for
okay.
that. Dan O'Herlihy. He plays the old man, and you may have also seen him in The Last Starfighter, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, or MacArthur. Now I remember watching The Last Starfighter, but I don't remember any of the people in it.
Last Starfighter is another classic one from when I was a kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And it's close to my heart because I like it's every gamer's dream. Like your game, the game that you play becomes your real life. That's what we're all hoping for. It's like all this
So
time.
I'm so good they're gonna call me about how good I am.
Right. Absolutely. All right, who's next?
We have Ronnie Cox, who plays Dick Jones because one penis themed name was not enough for this guy. And you might know him from Total Recall, Deliverance, or Beverly Hills Cop, which you guys covered in episode 4. Is that what that's saying?
Yeah, that's one of the earliest episodes of the show. In a previous incarnation of the show, I'm basically showing my son movies that I love that he had never seen before. So that was the 4th episode, and we had a ball watching that. And another reason to put this on, obviously, to make note of that he was in Beverly Hills Cop, because we have the brand new Beverly Hills Cop Axel Foley that's out.
Yeah.
And although Ronnie Cox isn't in it, most of the other characters return. So that
most of them.
Yeah. And that was a very entertaining piece of television. But
It's funny, I just watched it last night.
What'd you think?
It's totally cromulent. It's watchable. It's enjoyable. There are good action scenes. The scene with the helicopter is phenomenal, a stunt scene. But it's like, I thought, oh my God, what a cringe fest. And it wasn't. And so that made it great for me.
Right. It could have easily been a cringe fest, but I think they made it work. I think they
made it work.
They're starting to figure out, well, every once in a while, they'll figure out a formula of how a legacy sequel will work. And, sometimes it's not going to work,
Exactly.
but when it works, it's magical because you want to return to the characters, but you don't want to be disappointed when you get there. Right.
Exactly. Exactly. And because everybody ages, because that's what time does. But, like, you have to address it without making it look pathetic.
One interesting thing about Dick Jones' character is that he prefers to go by Dick. That's his choice. But whenever somebody wants to insult him, they'll call him a dick, but they're calling him his name, right?
I know. I love that. I love that. It's so good.
It's just a slight change in intonation at how they do that, and he knows when they're doing it, so that's it. And he still doesn't change his name. He's still going by Dick instead of Richard, so that's a beautiful thing.
So good.
So up next is Kirkwood Smith. He plays Clarence Boddicker, and he's been in Broken Arrow that we covered in episode 20, Star Trek, I want to say that's 6, The Undiscovered Country, and Girl Interrupted. It's funny how I got confused about Roman numerals for a fraction of a second.
Okay. You probably saw it like the Spock symbol. You're like, Star Trek Spock 1? What?
Right. Star Trek Spock. He's a fascinating actor because it's like he's always popping up in TV or movies or whatnot. And he's been in several Star Trek properties. I remember one of the things he did an episode of Star Trek Voyager, and I think that was a 2-part episode. So he's always popping up, and you never know what you're going to get with him. Is he a hero? Is he the villain? I think he really rocks that villain space though. So I always
Oh yeah, and
go
what's
ahead.
really weird for Kurtwood Smith and people who are coming into watching this movie, listening to this right now and haven't seen RoboCop but are gonna watch it afterwards. Kurtwood Smith plays the dad on That 70s Show. So most people know him as like a lovable curmudgeon, and he is a villain in this. And so it is kind of fun to get to see that if you don't know how good he is, because he does a lot more of that than the dad in a show.
Also, I did not realize his name was Kurtwood Smith. I mean,
it's like the guy in Beverly Hills Cop whose name is Judge Reinhold.
Right.
Judge is a first name.
Right, absolutely. That's a strange one. So who's up next?
An actor who I absolutely adore, Miguel Ferrer, who plays Bob Morton, who you might know from Traffic or Rio 2 or Iron Man 3, or like that guy's got so many credits under his name. That's a small sampling of who he is. And I think he really plays this kind of character very well. Maybe you would call him a character actor, but as soon as you saw his face, you'd know who I'm talking about.
I really can't even call him a character actor because it's like he's good at, being different people, as an actor, right? So he was on a long running TV show where I guess he was a doctor or something like that. And he worked in that space. I remember him, like, I don't know, there's something about him that's very distinctive. Like when you see him on screen, you remember his face. So I remember him, he was on a Star Trek movie where he had a really small part. You just seen him like at the controls, pushing some buttons, and then you don't really see him again for the rest of the movie. But like when you see him again, it's like, I know that guy. He's so familiar. But really...
And what I really know him from is the same thing that I know Ray Weiss, who we're about to talk about, from is Twin Peaks. He's a main character. They're both main characters in Twin Peaks. So like, I think of him as very, very strange actor. I love his strange though, and this is definitely some of his strange.
Right. Up next is Robert Duquois. He plays Sergeant Reed. You may have also seen him in Shortcuts or Miracle Mile. I have not seen him at all, so I am not familiar with his work. But he was really good in this movie. He really felt like a police sergeant.
Yeah, I'm like trying to pull up a picture of him because I can't place that particular actor's name. It's just sad. I'll have to look at him in a second.
We are police officers. We don't strike. Very powerful line.
Thank you. Now yeah. I guess I haven't really seen anything else that he was in. Although I have heard of Coffee, I haven't seen anything else that he was in besides this, which he is very, very, very good in.
Right.
And then after that, we do have, I alluded to Ray Weiss, who plays Leon Nash in this, who you might know from Batman, The Killing Joke, or Dead End. And I really think a lot of people know him from Twin Peaks. He plays the dad in Twin Peaks, and he is transcendent in that. He's also in a lot of stuff, too. He's a person for IMDb is going to go deep.
Yeah, he is a very distinctive face.
Oh, yeah. And how?
It's not his fault he looks like a mobster.
It's true. It's like the guy who plays Cousin Paulie. Like, that guy's only ever going to get those roles.
Right.
I guess lean into it, right?
Absolutely.
Actually, I work with a bunch of background actors who make their whole gig just playing the mafia in the background. They just look like they just wear suits and sit around in the backgrounds of scenes and look menacing.
And look menacing.
That's their job. They do it well.
Right. Up next is Felton Perry. He plays Johnson. He's been in Magnum Force and Dumber and Dumber. It's funny that I guess in every corporate setting you have to have somebody named Johnson. It's another penis metaphor, I guess.
I was going to say, yeah, there are a lot of dick names in here. We even have Boddicker as well. Like, okay.
Right. Who's the next person?
Oh, yeah. We also have Paul McCrane, who plays Emil Antonowski. Antonowski. Let's go with that. Antonowski. Who you might know from Fame or the 1988 remake of The Blob, which didn't have Matt Dillon. It had his brother in it, right? I believe that's the lead on that one.
I don't know. That's one of the ones that I missed. I don't recall watching the Fame movie. I was a fan of the Fame TV show. I don't recall actually watching the movie. But I think I watched probably all of the episodes of the Fame TV show. But the funny thing about Emil, I needed to add him on the list because he is the body horror guy. He's the slime guy. Like RoboCop obviously is the body horror guy. But this guy really, when I think of body horror, this is what I think about.
Absolutely.
I think of Emil.
Yeah.
He has one of the most impactful moments of this movie.
God, yeah, and I'm looking him up. I believe he played a very famous character on he was a very long-running character on ER and is the reason why if you throw a fake arm at my brother, he will faint. Because there's a scene in ER where that particular character gets his arm cut off by standing too close to a helicopter that's tipped over.
Oh, wow.
And the arm comes at the screen all like blah, 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 blah. And it like traumatized my brother to the point where like you can just re-trigger that memory anytime you want, which is funny because we're talking about his body horror in this. He goes and does ER and does one of the biggest body horror scenes in ER as well.
Yeah, you gotta love him.
Good stuff. I mean, stick with what you were, stick with what you're passionate about.
The last actor I have on the list is Jesse D. Goins. He plays Joe Cox, the final penis reference. He's
right in there.
He's also been in The Ugly Truth and Soldier. I don't remember him as Soldier, but it's definitely one of my favorite movies, and I'm going to put that on the list. So I can't wait to watch that, to rewatch that, and see Jesse. Well, not Jesse, but Jesse D. Goins. That which almost sounds like groin.
You know what? You're right. There's two. That's a subtle one.
Yeah. It's a real
That's just
sausage.
The actor's actual name. He can't help it.
Right. This movie is a real sausage party.
Actually, besides Annie, it kind of really is. And then also the woman who plays one of the people inside the laboratory waking up the RoboCop. There's another female there.
Oh, I don't have her name.
Yeah, I can't remember her name. She's fairly inconsequential character, but
right.
There are two women in this movie. They definitely do not talk to each other. It's not a Bechdel test Survivor, but it has aspects of it that it survives.
Right. You have the women who are the scientists, and you have the women with what you call it with what's his name? I guess he called them models.
We'll call them models too.
The two women with Bob, and those are like the most significant women in the whole movie, other than Annie Lewis. So there's that.
For every step forward that they take with the portrayal of Annie, they might take back with that scene with those two women, but
right.
It's fine. It's fine. It's still a really awesome movie.
Right. So tell us more about our director.
This movie, as we've already said, and will continue to say, is directed by Paul Verhoeven. And that's really important because so much of what this film winds up being is because of the way that Paul Verhoeven makes films, has his scripts, approaches filmmaking, is as a person. You might know him from Hollow Man. You probably know him from Starship Troopers, because that's another one that is a deeply fan loved cult classic that's highly satirical, or Showgirls, or even Basic Instinct, or even Total Recall, which is my favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, even though there are a lot of great Arnold Schwarzenegger movies.
Yeah. And I realized that Starship Troopers and this movie have a lot of similar satirical elements. So one of the things he does, he does like a kind of news report in this movie, and he kind of does a similar thing in Starship Troopers. It's like, you can join now. Would you like to know more? And I always love that about Starship Troopers.
Aspect. Both of these movies are deep commentaries on capitalism and consumerism, so I think that they pair very well together. One is a little bit more about corporate greed, and one is a little bit more about military greed and industrialism set in space, but they're both awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So this movie was written by Edward Neumeier and Michael Miner. Neumeier, he wrote Starship Troopers, Anaconda, and The Hunt for the Blood Orchid. His as far as writing goes, most of his writing credits have something to do with RoboCop or Starship Troopers. It's not too much outside of that. And pretty much the same for Miner. I guess he co-wrote Anaconda's The Hunt for the Blood Orchid with Neumeier, and he wrote Lawnmower Man 2, Beyond Cyberspace. But other than that, it's just pretty much everything connected to RoboCop. And I suppose they've gone on to be directors or producers or something like that. I wasn't curious enough to look up their entire background. But as far as writing is concerned, this is basically their big enchilada right here. This movie, RoboCop, and to some extent, Starship Troopers.
That's kind of funny to me to be like, wow, you did Starship Troopers and RoboCop, two incredibly thoughtful, deeply satirical, cult commentary films, and then you're like, cool, I guess maybe Anaconda is a sequel?
Yeah, that's wild. All
right.
They wrote RoboCop and it was like, I guess I'm done here.
Although, if you listen to the RoboDoc, which is a documentary about the making of RoboCop, that I do believe the impetus around the creation of the script is not as lofty as what the script winds up being. I'm pretty sure it's just them being like, ooh, let's make a robotic cop story.
Right.
Maybe you get lucky every once in a while.
Right. So, tell us about the music.
I'm going to tell you about the music, and oh my God, I hope I pronounced the guy's last name right. It's a really easy first name. It's either Basil or Basil, depending on how you want to emphasis it. But the last name is Polidouris, I believe. Basil Polidouris. And he has a pretty lofty score career. You might know him from The Hunt for Red October, Les Miserables, Conan the Barbarian, Red Dawn, Iron Eagle, or Quigley Down Under. And those are some soundtrack driven things. This is, notable in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. There are two types of soundtrack. There, the soundtrack that is just kind of in the background. It's just basically to help you emotionally get along with the movie. And then there's the music that you can hum after you leave the theater, right?
Oh yeah.
I think,
Yes.
and that's what I feel like most of his is. Iron Eagle, I feel like is more like the latter. It's more like something that emotionally helps you get along because they really use a lot of rock music, and there I think it's Van Halen actually who that kind of drives the music in Iron Eagle. But like Conan the Barbarian, that's something that you hum after the theater, right?
Yeah. That's something that, like, much like the Star Trek, I'm sorry, much like Star Wars, you're cosplaying with the sword and pretending to be Conan, and you're either thinking or humming the soundtrack
Right,
while you're doing it. It's like part of the performance needs the music, even when you cosplay it.
right, absolutely. It really it does more than help you emotionally in the story. It basically helps carry the story with you after you leave the movie theater, and I think that's
100%.
fascinating. I love that, and I love the soundtrack to this one. It's like it's got some elements where it's like you're banging on metal or something like that to kind of emphasize that this person was the main character is manufactured, not necessarily
Yes.
born, and so I think it's like the music is kind of reminding you of that. Aside from the fact that he's bulletproof and he's like shooting at people without actually looking at them. So that's it for the opening credits, and I don't really have any announcements. I can't think of anything. All I can tell you is that I've been watching three TV shows. I've been watching The Acolytes, I've been watching House of the Dragon, and I've been watching The Boys. Do you have any
Ooh.
shows on your radar?
I have definitely been watching The Boys. I think they're really, really an amazing season this year. I loved how they can go balls out with the violence to try and like push their audience to an emotional response, and then they can go ahead and have that scene like they had with Simon Pegg. I want to say 2 episodes ago. That was so moving and small. And I
Right.
love that they're taking risks like that. And I really encourage people to check out that show, even though a lot of people say, like, oh, it's too violent. I'm like, well, the violence has context and it really does elevate the experience.
Right, absolutely. And then there was speaking of Simon Pegg in that episode, it's like actually he's there for like several episodes. And I think
Mm-hmm.
like the first few episodes he's just lying in bed. And
Mm-hmm.
and what I was thinking was like, well, they just brought Simon Pegg along just so he could lay in bed the whole time. But then on the final episode, it's like, oh my God. He's like
Well, that's why they brought him for the
right.
season.
That's why they brought him.
Oh,
And he's
yes.
just killing it as an actor. He's absolutely killing it, and it's
Phenomenal.
heartbreaking to see when a family member they start basically they start to deteriorate mentally, and it's like it's a horrible thing to have to experience. And their boys kind of captured it perfectly, and it's that makes it amazing television.
100%. And then the only other thing that I've been really hard on telling people to see lately, because I want there to be a season 2, and if not enough people watch it, it will not be given one, is Scavenger's Reign, that got dropped by HBO but got picked up by Netflix and is now in that like maybe limbo of seeing how many people watch it. It is the most beautiful world building sci-fi horror that I have ever seen, both live action and animated. It is truly breathtaking. It is like Blue-Eyed Samurai level of get your ass and watch this. I don't care if it's fucking animated. Good.
Yeah, I need to go and check that out. I've heard a lot about it, and then there's also another show that Netflix have similarly saved was I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's Star Trek Prodigy. Even though I have to admit I haven't really been
Oh,
watching that, but it was a show that was on Paramount Plus. But Paramount Plus doesn't have a
yeah.
huge audience, so Netflix was able to pick it up. They have a much greater audience, especially a large children audience. So hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
now that you have a larger audience, that there'll be people around to see it. So it's a sneak.
Yeah.
It's a sneak sequel to Voyager. That's what that is.
Ooh. Ooh. Well, you got me interested.
Yeah. So if you enjoy Star Trek Voyager, you have to watch Star Trek Prodigy. That's
All
at
right.
least got a reprieve on Netflix, and maybe it'll get a season 3. Only time will
There you
tell.
go. Fingers crossed.
So that's it for I don't really have any more announcements. The only thing else that I have is that I have a there's a podcast that I come across, and it's neat. It's it's neat. It's fun. It's called Boutique, and I will let them explain themselves with the trailer they sent me.
I'm Pitney.
And I'm Amelia.
And we're from
Pitney and Amelia's Bitchin' Boutique. Who are we?
Why, we're your new best friends, of course.
Pull up a seat and listen in to what we think about people, places, and things.
Geeky stuff, horror movies, weirdos we know, spirituality, sexuality, food, filth.
It's like eavesdropping on the people at the next table for like an hour or so, and wishing you could join in on their conversation.
Also, do you see who just came in? Look at that hair.
Oh, honey, just... no.
Bitchiness, you're soaking in it.
We soften your hands while you do the dishes.
Pitney and Amelia's Bitchin' Boutique.
We're here.
We're queer. And
we're in your ear. Every other Friday, where all the classiest podcasts are found.
All right, and that is Bitchin' Boutique, and now we're going to slide over to talk about our favorite parts. Now, I try to keep it to 5. I'm guaranteed I'm going to lose count, and it's almost impossible to have just 5 favorite parts because this film, from beginning to end, is just chock full of the most meaningful, most fulfilling imagery and storytelling and just stuff. It's just it's stuffed. It's a stuffed movie.
So good.
Yeah, it's fascinating how much story that they were able to put into this movie. Everything from the world building all the way up to the disparate characters that you run into when you watch this movie. So, KT, I'm going to throw it over to you. We're going to go like back and forth one at a time.
Back and forth.
You
I'm
tell me one of yours. I'll tell you one of mine, and then we'll go until we finish up. So, what's your first favorite part?
I'm gonna go really funny because this is probably the most. This is the reason why I think I quote RoboCop the most in my life, and it is incredibly small and totally silly and stupid. But my favorite thing about RoboCop is Ed 209, the second iteration that they create, and I even actually on the other side of the room I could go grab. I have a little Lego Ed 209 that we just built. And I even brought my husband a shirt that says Shred 209, which shows Ed 209 learning how to skateboard so that he can finally get down those stairs. Because my favorite scene is the scene where the stairs are the reason he fails.
Right. He falls down. He cries like a baby. That was so awesome.
I know. And the fact that the sounds that make up the noises that he makes are like a pig and a tiger. It's all of these animals overlaid into each other to make those like wheelie squeeze. It's
Yeah. He growls at people. He doesn't know when to stop shooting. He's like a fascinating character in his own right. And one of the things that I noted about Ed 209 is that it's the best use of stop motion animation. I mean, we grew up with stop motion animation with the I forgot Ray somebody. I forgot his name. Anyway, we was Harrenhausen. Right. You had the stop motion skeletons, or you would have the stop motion giant figures. You could tell it was stop motion, but it was charming. You was already engaged with the story, so you didn't care that you could tell that they were using stop motion effects. But in this, you had a robot in stop motion. Of course it's stop motion because it's a robot. It fits, right? It works in a ways that it doesn't work with organic objects in something like an animal or a plant or anything. So that was awesome. It was great. It was great use of stop motion.
Oh God. And they had to do that. I mean, there was a limitation on what they physically could do because they built the actual prop one that they would have the actors stand next to in physical space. But would you believe how fucking heavy something that would have to be, even out of foam at that size? So they couldn't really articulate it. They couldn't really get it to do anything. So anytime it has to do something, they have to rely on stop animation, because that's where we are in history in film right now. That's your option. You can't just go call Weta and be like, make me a puppet or CGI it or make it in Horde.
Well, the only other option, it would still be 3D animation. It would still be stop motion, but I'm pretty sure they use like miniatures. They probably did something like that. Nowadays,
it is a miniature. The stop motion is a miniature.
Right. But nowadays, if they don't do CGI, then they would just actually build a robot.
They would just have the ability to do that.
Right. Like with the latest Star Wars films, the ones that came out in the sequels that are now, I guess, 5 years old at this point. The sequel trilogy, I think R2-D2 was a real robot. They had another robot called, I forgot. It was the ball robot. It was shaped like a ball with a head on top, and that was
BB-9.
Yeah, BB-8. He was an actual robot. So now they have the ability to do that. And the thing about Ed 209 and the stairs, which I thought was kind of funny, it's funny now because now we have those robot dogs that you can kick and they'll stand right back up.
We gotta stop kicking robot dogs. That's how we get Skynet.
That's how we get Skynet. I agree wholeheartedly. One of my favorite parts is like I said, it's so many. I don't want to choose any of these and exclude anything else. But I'm going to go with the media break with Lisa Gibbons because of the impact it had on me. Because I don't think that was her name. I don't think that was her character's name. But I can't think of any other name because I used to watch Entertainment Tonight all the time. Like that was a show that I had to watch. It came on every day, and almost all the time every once in a while or whatever, you would see Lisa Gibbons. And so when I saw her in the movie, I was like, that's Lisa Gibbons. It's like I can't see her as anything else. And then the whole concept of the media break and how it was like that's how the movie opens, and then it gives you all of these. In part of the world building, it gives you all of these things that's going off in the world. You have the Lee Iacocca High School. You have the Star Wars defense system misfiring and accidentally killing 2 presidents. You had what I think is Acapulco that was like had an armed rebellion or something like that. You had all of these things going on in the world at the same time that Detroit's trying to deal with crime. So that I love the media breaks.
Yeah, they are easy to miss too. I think you're gonna catch that on like a second or third viewing, the full depth of all the stuff that's happening in those media breaks, and it is hilarious.
Yes. Just mentioning Lee Iacocca High School, just that is on its face. That's funny.
and the fact that it's not one, but it's 2. It's 2 presidents. We're working on it.
Right. 2 presidents got offed because of a space laser. So that's fascinating. There was some. I think they said South Africa was threatening people with a neutron bomb. There's like so many things that was going on in the world of RoboCop, and then they would go back to Detroit to find out what RoboCop was doing. I love the media breaks. They were awesome. They added to the satire. So yeah, that's a thumbs up right there.
Mm-hmm. It's another favorite scene of mine. I guess it's the very first time we get the full reveal of the suit, because we've kind of been a little tease and a little tease and a little tease, and then you see that full reveal, and it's like, holy shit. And it could have been stupid. And if you know how hard it was to get Weller in the suit, keep Weller in the suit, and the prosthesis that connects him to the suit is latex. And as someone who has made latex props and worked with latex props, the number one things that make latex props move off is sweat. And so they literally had hours with Peter Weller to get them correct and get these scenes before it's going to melt off his face. You're going to see a crack when he goes to turn and to talk. And yet there isn't a scene in which you see the suit where you don't see it in its full glory. And that first scene is the start of that.
Right. The piggyback on the reveal, the whole scene surrounding the full reveal. So it's like when he goes into the police station and you don't really see him and he's kind of walking down, and then the police officers see him before the audience sees him, and they know
you see the reaction.
Right,
first.
you see the reaction, and then they run down the hallway to go to the range to see is that where he was at? Was he in the range or he was in the
Yeah, he was in the range because the gun comes out of his thigh. That was a hole to do to make that prop work to get it to come out of his thigh.
It was either, or did he go to the lab and they saw him at the lab? I can't remember, but I think
he goes right into the gun range.
He goes to the gun range, and then the thing that I found fascinating was that I felt like their reactions were real. Like, this is how real people react if they saw something that was like totally like out of the world. Like, you see a giant he's not even like a giant dude, but just this massive looking robot just walk into your police station, and then all the cops just like drop what they're doing to try to figure out what's going on, and running down the hallway and all that. I like that real reaction. That felt real. I think that's one of the things that make the movie work was they had a lot of real moments of like real human reaction, and that was awesome. So
and Peter Weller was refusing to be called Peter in the suit. He was only being RoboCop, and he made people. He would say RoboCop wants an Oreo, and somebody would have to go feed him a fucking Oreo. He was a bit much on this. Bless his heart.
I think I saw that. I didn't put that in the trivia, but I read that somewhere, and then somebody had made fun of him, and then I think he kind of sort of stopped. I think it was like a production designer or a stunt or a costume. I can't remember, but it was one of the crew was making fun of him and his Oreos, so he kind of had to stop doing that. He was taking the method too far.
Yeah. At that same vein, I can imagine him walking on set for the extras in that cop scene, fully embodying. So when I see their reaction, I know that it is likely they're actually reacting to him versus like, oh, he's not even fucking on set for this. Like, you're right. It was a real moment.
Right. So one of my other favorite parts, so you had I really like the whole like first reveal of Ed 209. I really like that when Dick is all proud and he opens the doors like, this is Ed 209. So basically the whole scene. This is a famous scene that pretty much gave RoboCop the X rating before they cut it down to. And for those of you who don't remember, X rating was what they had before they came up with the NC-17 rating. So apparently the scene of a man getting shot up was entirely too long, so they had to edit it down so that it could get an R rating. And
when he was sorry.
No, go ahead.
And when he was on set, Verhoeven kept screaming for more blood during that scene. So even what they sent out was like curbed, and it still was like, guys,
Right. So the robot comes out, he's all threatening, and you have to have a volunteer to point a gun. So the volunteer, he takes a gun, he points it at Dick, and Dick says, no, point it at Ed 209. So here's the first problem. Like, Ed 209 doesn't think it's his job to protect people. He's only interested in protecting himself. So
reactionary cop.
It's like he's a horrible police officer because he's going to be walking the streets not really giving a fuck about anybody else.
just killing people. And that's part of the commentary on the type of cop we may be making at the time. Right,
absolutely. So and then he points it at Ed, and then Ed tells him to drop the weapon, and he doesn't, and then it's kind of parallel to the kind of situations that we were protesting about like a few years ago about, the unjust police killings, the extrajudicial police killings of citizens. Like, we were protesting that a few years ago. And now I'm reminded of that watching this scene where Ed 209 is killing this executive after the executive threw down his weapon. And it's like he's trying to get away from Ed, and he's going to the other people. The other people's like, "Get away from me!" He's pointing his guns at you. and then you had the dude's blood splattered all over the model of Delta City. So that was fantastic. And then at the end of the scene, you had the old man saying, "Dick, I'm very disappointed."
Just like, you should have. We can all do a little better.
Yeah.
And to focus in on the actor who gets shot to death in that scene for just a moment, because he does a very good job, because it's incredibly iconic when he falls on the model of Detroit City, and it's like, oh, wow. What if I told you the placement of the squibs for that particular scene went off such as it went off right on his nuts?
Oh, wow.
And the actor still held it together to get the take, but they didn't get any more takes.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Like, we're fucking done here.
Right.
Again, going back to it might be cold, but bitch, you acting.
Right. Well, I guess that he used that, right? He used that as part of his acting, right? So it's like he didn't have to pretend that he was in pain. He was in pain. And then
you were flying a little fast and loose on the set.
Right. And then the other thing about that is that, depending on how hard the squid hit, just like a boxer, if he gets hits in the nuts, you get like 5 minutes to recover. He had 5 minutes. He could have recovered.
I think in the take where you blew my nuts off, let's just go with that.
Right.
I'm going to get better acting than when you actually nut tapped me, guys.
Right. That's exactly right. So,
but again, this is a very dick forward film. So
right. And then the coup d'état at the end of that scene is when, what's his name, steps up. So you had
Miguel Ferrer.
Yeah, Bob. Bob steps up. I keep forgetting his name for some reason. So Bob Morton, kind of a dick, because like his colleague was just murdered right in front of him, and he's like, "But I got a better plan." He's like, just a horrible human being.
What if we also tortured a human as well?
Right. Just a horrible human being that takes the opportunity to present his plan to the president. But it works. So like if he hadn't taken the initiative, we would not have had a movie to watch.
And that's a commentary on like business in America is so ruthless. You literally just saw your colleague murdered in front of you, and your only thought is, oh, this would actually be a perfect pivot point for me to make a grab for success.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, incredibly ruthless. Another scene that I would like to bring to attention is the first scene when they turn on what is called RoboVision.
Yeah.
Which is where we get to see out of the robo suit POV for what Peter Weller, RoboCop's character, is seeing, which could have been incredibly corny at the time, as we talk about the limitations of what a film at this time could do with special effects. And when you know how they accomplished it is even more notable. Because all of that was done by hand painting on the film. So all of the lines as it's like tubing in and skewering, that's somebody hand painting it. The square around the vision, that's somebody hand painting it. It's really thoughtful and meticulous, and it holds up even today where most special effects like this would have not. Right.
I remember something similar, a similar technique that John Carpenter used in Escape from New York. There's a scene. It's funny, right? Because it's a scene on a computer. So you have a computer screen and you have basically a wire drawing, but the studio didn't have a budget to have a computer render a wire drawing. So they had to do a practical effects for a computer image, which is, it's like now we've gone full circle. Like we're doing the exact opposite now, where we're using computers to imitate real life. But back in the day, they had to use practical effects to imitate computer imagery. So that's fascinating. I think the first use of actual computer visual effects was in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. So there's this whole thing.
Oh, I'd buy that.
Right. There's this whole thing where they're doing the presentation of the Genesis planet, the Genesis project. So there's a presentation where they shoot the Genesis missile at a planet, and the planet starts to reform, and it becomes a dead world, becomes a life-giving world. And all of that was done through computer animation, and that was pretty much the first time it was done in like a movie. So at least that's what I remember. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was computer effects has come a long way. I didn't realize that those lines in RoboCop were drawn by people. They're so convincing and look so real. And there are a lot of practical effects like that. There's something similar later on when he's crime fighting. What I liked about was there something else that you wanted to say about the vision before I get into it?
I mean, we can keep talking about practical effects in this film. It's all practical effects.
Right. It's all practical.
In which they have them. Yeah.
What I was going to talk about was that, so this is one of my favorite parts again, is it's like he gets shot, the screen goes blank, we're seeing from his point of view. And then when the movie picks up again, like when the very next scene is again his point of view, but now it's obviously artificial. Like what you're seeing is that the point of view from a created being. It looks like a camera's point of view, and then it is like you see them like working on them. It goes blank. It comes back on again, and you see a different scene. It goes blank, and it's like this. It's him like basically going through time to get to the point where it finally comes on basically for the final time, and it basically stays on. You see things from his point of view. But that was just fascinating. It really draws you into the movie. I really loved that because like he gets died and when he dies, you're like, and you see the screen goes blank from his point of view, you're like, oh no, what happened? And then the screen comes back on again, but now he's obviously a robot. You're like, oh my God, it's happening, right? It's so genius. It's such a fantastic way of drawing people in the film and then getting them on board with this man becoming a cyborg. So that was just great. You have that scene where, like you were just mentioning, where he's tracking the pen, and the scene where, like, he wakes up again, and it's like a New Year's Eve party, and the woman comes over and she kisses his camera and smudges his face with lipstick,
forehead or whatever.
Yeah, wherever she kissed him at, we don't know because we can't see it from the outside.
You have to assume they probably didn't put it in his mouth, so probably on like his face or something.
Yeah. I don't think she would want to kiss that thing on the lips.
I mean, Peter Weller has some fantastic lips. As far as picking an actor who you're only going to see from like the nose down, he does have a pretty good lower face.
Yeah, he does. He has a particular style of lips. I will say that.
And it's hard to get actors on board for this role because most of them are like, I don't want to play a character where you don't fucking see my face for like 70% of the movie or on the cover of the film. Right.
I think actors are kind of getting over that now. I know before it was a very big deal, and it was, I'm not saying it was a problem, but what I'm saying is that there were certain characters that you would expect for them to wear like a mask or something for the whole time. And it's not something that a lot of people want to sign up for. So famously, you have Judge Dredd with Sylvester Stallone. And I like the movie, and I'm not as invested in the comic book character as some other people. So it didn't bother me that through most of the film, he didn't wear a helmet. But when you looked at some of the fandom, they were really upset that he almost never had his helmet on, because in the comics he never takes it off. Like there's never a point in the comics, there's even a point, because this is supposed to be a little bit satire too, so there's a point where like he's showering with his helmet on because he never takes it off.
Yeah, and that's a testament to the, again, amazing acting of Peter Weller in this, because most actors say that not just out of the vanity of wanting their face on screen, but the incredible limitations of losing 50% of your face during an acting performance. How am I supposed to act in this scene? No one can see the thing I used to act with. Right. And like Weller went as far as booking a very famous choreographer and a ballet instructor to put together the movements that make, I mean, we think about like, I just do the robot. And he's like, he kind of is, but he's doing a whole movement that makes sense for the weight of the suit, the body he's in, everything. It's so thoughtful.
Right.
And that's why he can do it, even though he don't see most of his face.
Right. And the other thing is that he's kind of a robot anyway, right? So it kind of makes sense that he's not that emotional. With some other actors, that would be a problem. So I remember LeVar Burton was complaining. Wait, he didn't. It wasn't more like a complaint, but it was a really major concern for him. Like through Star Trek: The Next Generation, he played Geordi LaForge, who is a blind character, and in order to see, quote unquote, he had these visors on that covered a lot of his face, and it's like, well, my eyes is what I use to act. So now you're kind of covering up one of the major tools that I use in order to convey emotion. And that was just something that he had to overcome, and he learned to work with it. But that's one of the concerns with actors, and like you said, actors is just like, I think that they're kind of coming around to being able to act without showing their faces. So, like in Carl Urban, he did a remake of, well, not a remake, but he did a new adaptation of Dredd. And in his version, he never took off his helmet. So I think there are some actors that are getting more comfortable with not showing their face. Daniel Craig, he did a cameo in Star Wars where he was a stormtrooper. So,
and didn't show his face.
Right. Nobody ever knew that he was there. So yeah, I think people are coming around. What was the other thing? The other thing that happened is that in the scene where his vision is going blank and then coming open, there was one part where his vision opens up again and he sees Bob Morton, and they're arguing over this arm. He says, "I thought we talked about full body prosthesis." It's like cut off his arm. It's like, we think we can save the arm. It's like, no, we don't want to save the arm.
No. It's such body horror in that moment. That is, right. Can you imagine because we're in the POV of him hearing that.
Right. Hearing them just casually talking about just chopping his arm off. That one of his human bits that could be saved that now they're going to take away from him. Just
not if it doesn't fit the consumerist machine. Not if it doesn't fit the complex. Like, right. No, just eat them up. Use them how you need to.
Right. So what's another one of you? I think we're on 4. As usual, 4? I've lost count.
I'm going to throw another. We talked about this a little earlier, so I'll bring it back up because it's well worth it. The scene in which Emil's character melts away.
Yeah,
another
absolutely.
Great special effects scene. You got to mention that one because it's so well done for, again, practical effects.
Just the whole scene also. He goes in. He gets somebody leaves a barrel of toxic chemicals around, and he happens to crash into it, and then he starts walking around
and just flops off himself. It is so good and so upsetting. It's almost as if Verhoeven was like, "Oh, so you didn't? The blood is the problem. I can do disgusting, but no, not so much blood. Okay,
yeah, absolutely.
Hold my beer."
Absolutely. His face is melting. And then he come across one of his colleagues. I think it was, I'm trying to remember which dude he ran into. I think it was Leon Nash. So he runs into Leon Nash and he's like, "Help!" And Leon was like, "Get off me, man."
No one can help you, my friend. Please do not touch.
Right. It's like, I can't help you and be horrified at the same time. It's like I'm too horrified to offer you assistance. It's like I'm disgusted. I'm about to throw up. What do you want me to do? I can't help you. I got to help me before I help you.
Maybe I could put you out of your misery.
Yeah. And that's exactly what happens. And then, like, when he gets hit, it's like his head comes out. His head comes off and basically splatters against the windshield because he gets hit by a car. His body just basically falls apart.
So visceral. But as a kid, I fucking loved that. I mean, when you watch this, I didn't watch it as a kid, but as a kid, I loved that kind of visceral special effects that was almost campy, or you're like, yeah.
Yeah. This went for it. This movie went for it. So since you mentioned that, I want to mention here's what I liked about the movie. After they got RoboCop set up, they sent him on patrol, and then they basically had him do like RoboCop stuff. Like what is a RoboCop going to do? Well, he's going to stop a robbery, right? He's going to stop a raid. He's going to rescue some hostages, and it's almost casually. And I enjoy that they kind of explored that aspect of RoboCop. Just what would a robot cop look like being on patrol? So that's what they showed. And so because they didn't really immediately sick him on like the main enemies, he's just doing like regular stuff, and it could have been a montage, but it wasn't. And it was like little vignettes, right? And each little vignettes was like short. They were enjoyable. They were funny. When he goes into the robbery, it was the first time I heard somebody scream "fuck me," and I couldn't. It sounded so stupid to me. It's like, why would anybody say that? And now I find myself saying it all the time. And then the funniest part where he saves the rape victim, and he shoots the guy in the junk, and like right between the woman's leg, hits him in the balls, and then just has a curious thing of just leaving his criminals there, right? Just kind of walking away after he stopped the immediate crime. And and how he tells, and the woman goes up, she tries to thank him and hug him, and he's just looking at her. "Madam, you suffered emotional shock. I will contact the rape crisis center," right? Very matter of factly. He doesn't have great bedside manner. And then the last one, where he rescues the hostages. And what's funny about that is that, again, the thing with the practical effect that I didn't know, because it looked real to me. And then when I watched it this time, I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what it looks like. So apparently, I don't know if I probably wrote this in the trivia already, but apparently they painted the people in that scene. So they didn't actually have a interferometer. They had, because in a movie, you see RoboCop looking through the wall, looking at the people and looking at their heat signature, which people are familiar with. But what actually happened is that the director painted these people to look like heat signatures, and they were naked. So they just a bunch of naked people walking around painted like heat signatures. And that's how they filmed that scene. And that's just amazing. That's just amazing. Just awesome.
That's like the end of Repo Man. The car needs to glow, but they couldn't afford to do the special effects, so they just painted it with really highly reflective paint and like shone a light on it, and it works. Right. But like this just paint. It's just paint, and yet it works. Right. Oh man, that's great. That is actually my fifth scene was going to be the same scene, specifically the rape scene. Right. Because when he looks at her and says, "Ma'am, you have suffered an emotional distress," it is such biting commentary on the concept that, like, if you think cops are literally just here to stop the badness, then you missed it. There's a whole level of their jobs. They have to be emotionally there for the victims. They need to work more than just, like, stop bad guy. That's it. Right. And it's so wonderfully encapsulated in just that one interaction. Right. And then sometimes we can't even get the police to do that. We can't get the police to be emotionally available to victims of crime. That can be a problem. No, that's like the trash can that goes around New York City, the like trash can cop. Like, what are you gonna do? Talk to it? Report something to it? It's worthless. It has nothing. It can't help you. Right. New York City has its own version of RoboCop. It's basically a snitch. It just goes around snitching on people. It's a roving speed camera. Yeah, that's about all that it is. Yeah, accurate. Oh man. So, did you want to replace that one, or do you want to pick another one? No, I think expand. I'll stick with that one. We'll just kind of expand out on it a little bit. Okay. I guess for my last one, there's so many nice ones. I'm looking at my list right now. I just want to looking at off camera. I don't know which one to choose. There are so many of them, and I don't want to leave anyone behind. I guess I choose the most salient one. So this is like the end of the movie where basically RoboCop gets his man. So RoboCop is on a journey to basically find the people who killed them, and he gets Clarence Monaker, but Monaker fingers Dick, who is an executive at OCP, and
the first time he tries to arrest Dick, he can't do it because then the Force Prime Directive becomes activated, and he can't do anything. And so he goes after a whole bunch of action sequences. He returns to the headquarters of OCP, and he once again confronts Dick and basically the whole board. And I think what happens is that he plays the evidence to shows that Dick was responsible for killing Bob. Dick is just, I had to kill Bob. I had to do it, right? He himself forgot that RoboCop can remember stuff and play it as evidence.
Yeah, can tape stuff.
Right.
Yeah, because he's a whole robot. Yeah.
Right. But I think what it was that he intended to kill RoboCop. So if he killed RoboCop, then the memory would not be an issue. So that's why he was super arrogant, because that was, he intended for Ed 209 to finish Robo.
True. Yeah.
So he plays the evidence, and then that's when the funny thing is that they still have the guns that they used for the demonstration for Ed 209. It's still in the office, the boardroom. It's still there. And he opens the case. He pulls out the remaining one. For whatever reason, the first one is still missing. I guess they never returned it to the case. So it's still one more left. So and it's a Desert Eagle, it's just a gigantic gun. So he grabs that, he grabs the boss, and he's like, I want a chopper, like immediately making demands and whatnot.
Yeah.
That is so funny. And so that's when the president is like, Dick, you're fired. And then he does his like little action move where he kicks Dick and gets away from Dick, and then RoboCop blows him out the window. And that's just awesome. But what I was actually getting to was that at the end of the movie, the president goes, "Nice shooting, son. What's your name?" And then that's when he says, "My name is Murphy." And RoboCop regains his identity, because the running theme throughout the movie is that he had lost something and he's trying to reclaim it. Like he has these bad dreams. He remembers getting murdered, and then he sees the people that Broniker has murdered, and he stumbles upon Murphy, and he suspects. So he comes to remember that he was once Murphy, and he goes through the neighborhood and finds his old house, and it's like every time he looks at something in the house, he remembers something, like he's remembering more and more. His memory is supposed to be erased, but it has not been a complete success, because he's remembering things, and he's getting emotional about it.
It's a ghost in the machine.
Right. He's getting emotional about it, and but he's still throughout the movie, at one point, on one hand trying to bring justice to the people, and on the other side trying to figure out who he is. And so at the end of the movie, he knows who he is. He can tell people that his name is Murphy. And I thought that was, and then the movie ends. It was just great. It was just great.
That's the line to end on. That is the line to end on.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you have any more of your favorite parts that you wanted to touch on?
No, I know we still want to hit the trivia top 10, and I don't want to make this run over. So I feel like that is a beautiful melange of great moments and like overarching why they are great moments.
All right, let's go hit it up. We are going to see the trivia top 10. All right, the trivia top 10 is trivia that I grabbed from IMDb, and luckily I have Katie as an expert, so if IMDb is wrong, she can make the correction.
I'll try my best.
Yeah, a lot of times I don't know what's wrong until I check another source. Like I see something that doesn't look quite right, and so I'll check another source, and it's like, oh, IMDb was wrong. But as far as I know,
this is the first film where they actually killed a guy and made him into a robot.
Right.
I don't know about that one.
All right. So the first piece of trivia is most shots of RoboCop and the police car show him getting out or preparing to get in. Peter Weller didn't fit into the police car in full costume. When he needed to be in the car, he wore the top part of the costume and sat in his underwear to maintain the illusion that RoboCop wears the entire suit while inside the car. Most shots show his robotic feet exiting first. So, yeah, I think that's correct because I've read that in plenty of places.
It's absolutely correct. I mean, the suit was incredibly limiting. And this and this wound up leading to iconic shot of the foot hitting the floor first, and then you get the full reveal. And that, had that not been the case, I still feel like that should have been shot. So whether this is the way they intended to shoot it all along, or what happened because of the limitations of the way the costume had to be made, which again, if you go watch RoboDoc, you're going to find out all of the nitty gritty about how that had to be put together. It really wound up working for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And then the second bit of trivia, still talking about our Robo suit, because it's a huge part of this film. The RoboCop suit was so hot and so heavy that Peter Weller was losing 3 pounds a day from water loss. Eventually, an air conditioner was installed in the suit. This is absolutely true. This is absolutely true, and you can listen to him talk about it in the documentary. He was sweating like a dog. It was causing parts of the prosthetic to come off. It was, even with the air conditioner in the suit, it didn't even really work that well. Like, this was a physically taxing performance in his dedication to maintaining the character, his dedication to maintaining the movement of the character, and then just enduring the fucking heat of that suit.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine.
And imagine standing next to the smell.
I think that when he eventually agreed to do a sequel, they said he demanded that they made changes to the suit to make it more comfortable, and they did.
Yeah. I would never agree to do that again without big demands on that. Yeah,
right,
that was the correct decision.
Absolutely. So the screenplay had been offered and rejected by virtually every big director in Hollywood before Paul Verhoeven got a hold of it. He received it while on holiday. I should have read this in a British accent because they said on holiday. On holiday. He received it on holiday in France and threw it away after reading the first pages, convinced that it was just a dumb action movie. After going for a swim, he found his wife Martini, it's probably Martini, reading the script.
Martine?
I'm not sure if it's Martine or Martini. It's probably Martine. He found his wife Martine reading the script and told her, quote, "Well, that's a piece of shit," end quote. However, she read it all the way through and disagreed, saying that the story was layered with many satirical and allegorical elements, which convinced him to direct the film. So, yeah, she was right. She was correct. Oh. She saved RoboCop.
Without him, there isn't a film. This absolutely is a result of his touch on the film. I know he didn't write it, but this succeeds because of his ability to do satire.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it's funny that this is not even close to the first time that this happened in film. Like, there's a very to talk about Lord of the Rings trivia, because I'm gonna Viggo Mortensen want to be in Lord of the Rings. He thought it was stupid fantasy. His 13-year-old son took a look at it and was like, "Please do it for me. Do it."
Right. Kids save the world.
The biggest role of his entire career, and he was almost just like, "Oh, people don't like fantasy." Sometimes a loved one needs to talk some sense into you.
Sometimes you need a little push in the right direction from the right person. Mm-hmm. Oh, you can get the next one.
All right. Oh yeah, sorry, just scrolling down. The next one, next bit in our thing here. Nancy Allen first arrived on set when Paul Verhoeven was shooting the deliberately cheesy sitcom It's My Problem, which appears on television screens throughout the film. That's the like, I'll buy for $1.
Right.
Allen was initially horrified to think that she had signed on to make a film with a completely incompetent director. I agree. If I had shown up and that's what was being filmed, I might call my agent immediately.
Yeah, that would be crazy. It's like, what's going on? Because the funny thing is that these scenes, like, you see the film you see the TV that like the scenes play out on television in the film, and you're looking at it and like it feels like it should be funny, but it's not funny at all. Like there's nothing going on in that show that's actually funny. The only thing that's a little bit funny is when a guy is saying, "I'll buy that for $1," and the only reason that that's funny is he says it over and over. Right.
Yeah, it's supposed to be
that's
schlock.
exactly what's
Like
going
this
on.
is what
Garbage.
is out on television right now.
I'm glad that
Garbage.
in the real future that has not happened. Yeah, I think I've heard
Although
about
if you
that.
watch
It's not
Fuckboy
something I
Island,
think I want to
it
watch.
might be pretty close.
Right. So, because
Don't
the hands
look
of
into the mouth
RoboCop
of
were made
badness.
of foam
Just move
rubber, the
on.
keys would bounce off of Peter Weller's hand every time he attempted to catch them. The production took up to 50 takes and an entire day's worth of filming before finally getting the shot right, which is crazy. Because you have to, is RoboCop walking, the police toss him the keys, he has to catch the keys, and he has to say his line, "Thank you." It's like so he can't be surprised that he caught the thing. Because you know a couple of those takes where he caught it and he was totally surprised that he caught it. It's like, no, Peter, you can't celebrate that you caught the keys. You got to maintain your composure.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
That's crazy.
That's fantastic. I do love that. That's the and when you're doing film, you will always wind up being surprised what winds up eating up the most time. You cannot prepare for it.
Right.
The trauma team portrayed in the movie trying to save Murphy was a real hospital trauma team. And as a result, their dialogue is mostly ad-libbed.
Yeah.
Worked well. I didn't know that.
I absolutely love it when they use real paramedics. Or they use real...
Why not? I'll let you know a secret about background acting. They require you to have those outfits yourself. You can't, you have to carry a cop costume if you can have access to a cop costume, because that's limited. But I have a nurse costume. I have a doctor costume. I have a couple of different things like that for getting called in for background. And when you call real hospital people, not only do you get the authenticity, they have their own outfits.
Right. That's amazing. I did not know that about background actors. Is you have to bring your own wardrobe. That's crazy.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't, but most of the time you do.
I imagine if you're in science fiction, you don't, because you're not going to have a spare Starfleet uniform or a smuggler's outfit in your back closet.
Although there have been times where I've gotten calls for, does anybody have a Starfleet costume or something like that?
Right.
It is a little cheaper if you have one and it fits you.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So director Paul I'm about to mess up his name again. Paul Verhoeven. I got it. Paul Verhoeven.
Perfect.
And Bob.
The next one's hard too.
Bob Botlin. Oh,
No,
Botin.
it's Botine.
Wow,
Botine.
Botine. Right.
Botine.
I see. It sounded different in my head.
Oh, it's written Botin. It's absolutely pronounced Botin, but you are talking quite possibly one of the biggest Botine fan heads. Like, I love his work and everything he does, and his work in The Thing is transcendent. Like, this movie again succeeds because Botine is working here. But I'll let you finish.
Right. So, this is funny. This is a funny piece of trivia. So, Verhoeven and Botin, the film's special effects designer, clashed repeatedly before and during production over the design and makeup of the RoboCop character. What they argued the most about was the scene where Murphy takes off his helmet. Botin wanted the scene to be filmed in a darkened area, fearing that the harsh light would reveal too much of the makeup effects. Verhoeven wanted the scene to be filmed as brightly as possible, stating that director of photography Josh Vacano would be able to light it properly without revealing anything. Botin said that it nearly came to exchanging blows with Verhoeven. I imagine this as a wrestling match. It's like, next Sunday, you're going to meet me in a squared circle, and we're going to decide whether or not the lighting on this will be light or dim. There's going to be a light or dim match this Sunday at the arena. So, I lost my place with that thing. But in the end, the director got his way, so Bottin refused to talk to him anymore for the remainder of production. However, at the premiere, both men were so impressed with how the scene had turned out that they instantly forgave each other. Bottin, who had even vowed never again to work with Verhoeven, happily accepted the offer to work with him on the next project, Total Recall. So yeah, and that's why Total Recall looks fantastic.
And yeah, look, if they hadn't been able to make up, we wouldn't have gotten that third boob.
Yeah, we had to have the third boob.
That's supposed to be special. And like, if you watch the documentary making it, you can see all the people who worked on set RoboCop, and they all have an impersonation of Verhoeven that they do because he was such a fucking tool. Like, he's intelligent, he's great, he's amazing as an artist. He was such a fucking tool to work with that he pissed everybody off. He would ask people to do stuff that was, by the idea of physics, impossible. Like, we can't make that do that. I'm sorry, Paul, that's not how this works. And he would be like, fuck you, do it. And they would just work around.
That's funny.
So it says a lot when everyone you work with has an impersonation of you blowing your top.
Right.
Next one is revealing that the film was running behind schedule and over budget. Verhoeven and producer John Davison purposely did not film one crucial scene, and that's the death of Officer Murphy. When production wrapped, they went back to Los Angeles and grimly informed the executives that Murphy's death had not yet been filmed. After watching the footage they did film, the execs were so astonished by the aesthetics and performances that they gave the filmmakers more money, and they filmed the scene in a redecorated warehouse in Los Angeles. That is brilliant. Most of this, I believe, is shot in Dallas because they had, like, that was where they could afford to and get these high-rise buildings and do all the stuff that they needed to. That is such a brilliant thing they do, to kind of put them in a point where they have to give you more money, but not, like, force it out of them. Just kind of be like, oh, man, what are we going to do, guys?
Yeah, I thought that was brilliant. I thought it was brilliant that instead of, like, trying to harangue the studio over getting more money, they just finished the film as it was and showed the studios like, well, you know, it would look better if we showed them get killed, right?
It's the missing piece, right? And they're like, yes, take our money. And when you look at that overhead, underhead on the amount that they spent for the amount that they made, that's like that's like Bad Boys 1 kind of turnover. Where like, how were you able to make this much money off of that little money?
Right. And the other thing is that that's also another one of my favorite scenes. Is like the whole Alex Murphy's death. So that was just, I mean, I thought the way that the police went into the warehouse was kind of stupid, but otherwise, because it's like the only thing that's going to happen is that you get caught and you get killed, and that's exactly what happened. Like, the reason I say it was dumb is because the end result is you getting captured and killed, and that's exactly what happened. And that was and the way it was done was like just amazing. It's horrifying, right? It did the job of horrifying the audience. At least I remember that I was with
it still does, in my opinion.
Yeah. The way like Bonnegar taunts Murphy, you know, with the gun, making computer noises like he's aiming for something and then shooting off his hand, just crazy.
Yeah. Just I would say like this scene walked so the boys could run.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the next one, the character Bob Morton was originally conceived as a stereotypical corporate exec, arrogant, unpleasant, and unlikable. However, when Michael Ferrer signed on and gave his performance as an amiable and charismatic individual, Edward Neumeier and Paul Verhoeven realized that the audience would likely start sympathizing with the character, and Bob Morton was rewritten to become the somewhat more pleasant individual that he is in the movie. But but he's still kind of a sleazebag. It's like it's hard to like him. Like you understand his motive. The only reason that you sort of like him is that you kind of understand his motives and his drive. Yeah. But he's still kind of a sleazebag.
Yeah, and the idea that it would be more sleazebaggy is like, oh wow, nice job, Miguel, because you fucking nuanced that.
Right,
it could have been totally flat.
Yeah, absolutely. He did bring a lot of nuance to that character and really brought him to life and it made it feel real.
Yeah, absolutely. The repeated line, "Buy that for $1," comes from Cyril M. Kornbluth's story, The Marching Morons, which presents a similarly cynical view of an over-commercialized future that desensitizes people to violence and war. A radio game show in the short story uses the line, "I'd buy that for $0.25" as its signature phrase. I guess they had to update it for inflation.
Yeah. They had to update it for inflation. So I thought that's one of my favorite pieces of trivia because it's like, where did that come from? Because it's like, they say it throughout the movie and it's so important. And then when you leave, it's like when you run into somebody that says, "I'll buy that for $1," you just know that that's somebody who has seen RoboCop. So that's the only thing that comes from. Otherwise.
It's very much like
yeah.
Shaka when the walls fell. Like it's a way to tell another person you have seen RoboCop.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's it for what we have with the trivia, and up next we get to see what the critics thought. So the critics gave it a 92%. The audience has it at an 84% on Rotten Tomatoes. IMDb Reviews has it at a 7.6 out of 10. But for me, this movie is a 10 out of 10. So
yeah, for me, same.
I'm not going to hold back. So why don't you tell us about what the critics are thinking?
We have Sarah Michelle Fetters from MovieFreak.com. Peter Weller's work as slain police officer Alex Murphy and then as unstoppable law enforcement titan RoboCop is a thing of peerless beauty. I can't help but agree with you, Sarah. That feels very accurate. Like we said, his performance, there's so much that Peter Weller does to make this film special.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, there was one, I thought I had put it in there, but I didn't. It's one piece of trivia left out was that Peter Weller, he had worked on like the mime work, like you had mentioned earlier, in order to basically act like a robot. You know, he was studying the type of movements that would look robotic. And he was studying with a world famous mime. And the suit was late. So they brought in the suit. And what they wanted to do is because they were kind of running late, they wanted him to start shooting right away, but he couldn't act in that suit the way he had rehearsed.
Changed everything. Yeah.
Right. So they basically had to push back filming some of the RoboCop scenes so that he could get used to the suit. It was him like arguing, like, I can't do this in the suit because I wasn't prepared for it. So they let him like basically practice in the suit for, I guess, a couple of weeks or whatever before they started filming the RoboCop scenes. So yeah, that's why Peter Weller is amazing.
Absolutely. Dave Kerr of the Chicago Tribune. RoboCop relies for most of its impact, and more disturbingly for much of its comedy, on an absurd exaggeration of physical force. Yeah, and I mean, I feel like that could be both something to say positive and something to say negatively. It definitely is, in and of itself, using that amount of violence as part of its commentary for what American audiences want at the time.
Yeah.
Same thing is true of The Boys.
I suppose so. Also, it didn't seem like Dave understands or even watches most action movies because pretty much every action movie exaggerates like physical force. It's what you come to expect, right?
Absolutely. Like, how do you have an action movie with like? How dare they fight in this action movie? Like, oh, okay.
Right.
And that's part of what I meant about the, like, some people deeply misunderstood this movie when it first came out. And they were like, oh, it's so violent and prurient. And I'm like, that is the comment. Why? Ask yourself why. Don't just react. Ask why.
Right. Absolutely. So up next we have one of the critics that I used to watch when I was growing up, Roger Ebert from the Chicago Sun-Times. Hold on a second. You know what? That's wrong. That is wrong because so this is a bad edit. So what has happened, ladies and gentlemen, is that I meant to write another critique on RoboCop on the notes that I'm going off of. But what has happened is that I don't have that. I have a note from Blown Away, that the previous episode. So I'm not exactly sure what happened. I thought that I put in the notes and it doesn't look like it's in here. But the next one is.
I was surprised to see that Roger Ebert said that about this movie. I was like,
So Alex Jones from the Radio Time wrote, it's Verhoeven's scabrous. I say it's a word that I don't know and I didn't rehearse. It's scabrous dissection.
I've never seen that word. Scabrous?
Yeah,
Scabrous?
yeah. I'll look it up later. It's Verhoeven's scabrous dissection of American social issues, trashy sitcom culture, and corporate greed that makes this comic book opus a subversive and thought-provoking edge-of-the-seat treat. Yes, I agree with this wholeheartedly. This is like a great encapsulation of this movie.
Yes. Yeah. If I had to just pitch this to somebody with one sentence, even though the sentence is a lot of words and is a little verbose, I would say this is a great sentence.
Yeah, absolutely. It's using $5 words, and I only have I don't have a dime.
I said I'd buy it for $1, not $5, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. So finally, RoboCop is, as of this recording, available on streaming on Max. That's it for today. Next week, I'm going to be doing an episode swap with my good friend and frequent guest, John DiGregorio. That means that I'm going to be grabbing an episode of his show, Movie Lovers Unite, and play it on this feed next week.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So the episode that I'm swapping out is called Eat My Shorts, The Breakfast Club Review. So that's when I was on their show with a couple of the guests talking about The Breakfast Club. So in that show, there was John's co-host, Rossi, and she also has a podcast called Rossi's Clubhouse. And then there's Beth from the podcast Made for TV Movie Club. And we're all getting together and we're talking about The Breakfast Club. So I'll play that episode next week to give myself a little bit of a break and then to show you my own self in a different context. So it'll work. It'll be great. You'll love it. And
I love that idea. I think it's great.
So you can also follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, the usual things. And don't forget that you can contact us with any questions or comments or suggestions at fanmail@backlickcinema.com. So Katie, do you have any additional plugs?
No, I mean, you can see me on Movie Runtime. I'm sorry, you can see me on Movie Night Extravaganza coming up. You can also go in their archives and see me on that. I'm going to be on the Letter Hack with Matt Strackman in a couple of the days to do a live drawing as well. Like, I'm all over the place. Type in Movie Runtime into social media, and you're going to wind up finding me. I would love it if you took a look at either We Have Ghosts at Home, my 5-minute short, or if you're willing to take the dive and something really intense, watching Girl in the Basement. And again, those are on YouTube, so easy to find.
Yeah, the Girl in the Basement, that is definitely intense. You gotta, however you prepare for horror before you watch it, do that. Like if you're the type of person that has to fast before you watch horror, do that.
And if I'll throw a little fact at people that I do when people are like, it's really scary. If you're overcome by the graphic body violence in that film, remember this. Anytime they yelled cut, they had to make sure I didn't eat my body props because they were made of a gelatin, like a little gummy, and they were so delicious. Like, they kept being like, can't you make a little extra bit so I can just nosh on the side?
That's good to know because that was definitely horrifying. Yeah, at least you got some great ideas for Halloween treats.
Exactly.
So one last time, if you like the show, then please help us grow by spreading the word about Backlick Cinema, the podcast. Believe me, it matters. Like, subscribe on YouTube or leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. I know you've enjoyed our guest, KT Baldassaro. So please check out What If I Don't Like It with KT Baldassaro. I messed it up. I messed it up twice, didn't I?
You were doing so good.
I was doing so good.
So good. The word bald and then the word ass. It's like driving into a parked car.
Baldassaro. Check out What If I Don't Like It with KT Baldassaro and Movie Runtime on TikTok. I've been Zoe Richardson. Be safe. Share a movie from yesteryear with your family. Hug your loved ones. And if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.